many long-standing franchises eventually faced the challenge of stagnation, resorting to rehashed plots that fail to capture the essence of the originals. Attempts by series like Star Wars, Jurassic World and Indiana Jones to replicate past successes often result in lackluster sequels that leave fans disheartened. However, some franchises, like James Bond, skillfully embrace self-parody. By incorporating iconic elements such as the suave agent and his sleek Aston Martin, Bond maintains its allure despite changing actors. The success of self-parody hinges on its intentionality, as it can either reinforce a franchise's identity or diminish its impact. From beloved classics to modern sensations, here are 10 movie franchises that became parodies of themselves. So, the 10th movie franchise that became a parody is Home Alone franchise. The Home Alone franchise, spanning 6 installments over 31 years, struggles to recapture the magic of its first 2 films. Despite featuring unsupervised children thwarting burglars with elaborate traps, subsequent sequels lack the emotional depth of the originals. As a Christmas movie, the franchise fails to deliver a compelling emotional payoff in its later installments, feeling more like poor imitations rather than genuine successors to the beloved classics. And the 9th movie franchise that became a parody of themselves is Scream franchise. The Scream franchise blends horror with murder mystery, urging viewers to guess who is behind the ghost face mask. Traditions like the first on-screen character being killed within 5 minutes have become fan favourites. Starting with Scream 2, the series embraced self-parody by introducing the in-universe Stab franchise, which retells its own stories with added gore and exaggeration. This self-awareness adds complexity, as characters openly discuss their place in the franchise and predict who will die based on genre conventions. And the 8th movie franchise that became a parody of themselves is Star Wars franchise. Despite its evolution, Star Wars has often grappled with the shadow of George Lucas' original trilogy. While the prequel trilogy faced criticism, the sequel trilogy attempted to revisit familiar themes, sparking controversy. Nearly 50 years later, the original films remain the pinnacle of the franchise. The Force Awakens, burdened with high expectations, played it safe by emulating its predecessors. In a vast universe of possibilities, Star Wars chose to retell the tale of an unlikely hero from a desert planet, echoing familiar tropes of the past. And the 7th movie franchise that became a parody of themselves is Jurassic World franchise. Despite its box office success, the Jurassic World franchise has faced diminishing critical reception, with each installment receiving lower Rotten Tomatoes scores than the last. While the visuals impress, they're the only aspect that seems to evolve from Spielberg's original masterpiece. As the 4th film approaches its 2025 release, Universal's promise of a new era raises questions about whether it can truly distinguish itself. So far, the franchise feels like a technologically advanced parody of its predecessor, with humanity repeating the same mistakes and suffering predictable consequences, leading to diminishing returns. And the 6th movie franchise that became a parody of themselves is Ocean's franchise. The Ocean's franchise excels at self-parody. Originally a remake of a 1960s Frank Sinatra film, Ocean's 11 set the standard for heist movies and influenced many that followed. The sequels, while somewhat contrived, embrace their absurdity with clever nods to the audience, such as Julia Roberts' character pretending to be Julia Roberts. Despite a neat ending, Ocean's 11 spawned sequels and a mediocre spin-off, Ocean's 8. A prequel with Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling might successfully reboot the series. And the 5th movie franchise that became a parody of themselves is James Bond franchise. Across its extensive history, the James Bond franchise has inevitably fallen into repetitive patterns. Despite evolving through different phases, certain tropes persist in even the most recent films. While Daniel Craig's portrayal added darkness and grit, the essence of Bond remained. In its heyday, the franchise embraced self-parody with outlandish gadgets and near-impossible escapes. Although newer films adopt a more grounded tone, familiar elements like Bond girls and iconic villain lairs endure. With Bond 26 on the horizon, the franchise faces a new era, yet some traditions remain unaltered. And the fourth movie franchise that became a parody is the Hangover franchise. Comedy franchises, often built on unique premises, struggle to sustain momentum. The Hangover's appeal lies not in its characters but in the absurd situations they face. While its sequel, set in Thailand instead of Las Vegas, surpassed its predecessor in box office earnings, it failed to impress critics with its lack of fresh ideas. Acknowledging its own derivative nature, The Hangover Part 2 sees the characters trapped in a familiar predicament, a trend continued in the subsequent installment. Despite this, Bradley Cooper has expressed interest in a potential fourth film. And the third movie franchise that became a parody of themselves is Indiana Jones franchise. Steven Spielberg's 1980s Indiana Jones trilogy introduced one of cinema's most iconic adventurers, ending perfectly with Last Crusade. However, Indy's box office appeal led to more films. The lackluster Kingdom of the Crystal Skull revived the franchise in 2008, and 2023's Dial of Destiny aimed to conclude it. Dial of Destiny flopped at the box office, highlighting the franchise's decline. Instead of presenting a fresh story set in the 1960s with an aging Indy, it rehashed old themes with Indy battling Nazis over a mysterious artifact. The opening, featuring questionable de-aging technology, epitomizes its attempt to recapture past glory. And the second movie franchise that became a parody is The Terminator. Like The Force Awakens and Jurassic World, 2019's Terminator Dark Fate heavily borrows from its original 1984's The Terminator. The return of Linda Hamilton excited fans despite 3 previous disappointing films. The first 2 Terminator movies remain the franchise's high point. Dark Fate creates an alternate timeline, dismissing the franchise's past failures, highlighting their disappointment. Though an improvement over Salvation and Genesis, Dark Fate's biggest flaw is evoking the brilliance of the original without matching it. And the last movie franchise that became a parody of themselves is the Expendables franchise. The Expendables brought together action stars like Sylvester Stallone, Dolph Lundgren, and Jason Statham, blending tribute and parody of classic action films. As the series progressed, it parodied its own excesses with an increasingly bloated cast and over-the-top explosions. Despite catering to its audience's tastes, the franchise's appeal has faded. With the latest installment flopping critically and commercially, future success hinges on moving beyond repetitive plots and action sequences. Unfortunately, the newer cast members also failed to resonate with fans. So what would you like to say about these 10 franchises? Tell us in the comments section, and for more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe this channel.